A blurry photo, a computer's guess. A knock at your door, arrested for a crime you did not commit. This is the story of a face, and how a machine looking at one put an innocent father in a jail cell for something he never did. Over the next 12 minutes, you will see exactly how it happened, why it keeps happening to people who did nothing wrong, and why the same technology is already looking at your face too. Picture an ordinary weekday. You pull into your own driveway after work. Your kids are inside. Dinner is on the stove. Two police cars roll up behind you, and before you understand what is happening, officers are walking you off your own front lawn in handcuffs, in front of your wife, in front of your two young daughters. And they will not really tell you why. This is not a nightmare, and it is not a hypothetical. It happened to a father in a quiet Detroit suburb in the winter of 2020. He had done nothing wrong, and the thing that sent police to his door was not a witness, not a fingerprint, not a tip from anyone who knew him. It was a computer. They took him downtown, his mugshot, his fingerprints, his DNA. Then a cell, and the better part of 2 days inside it, about 30 hours for a crime he had never heard a word about. When a detective finally slid two photographs across the table, a still pulled from a store's security camera, he lifted one up beside his own face and said the only thing there was to say, "This is not me." "You mean a person looked at me and decided I did this?" And the detective's answer is, what should stop you cold? No, a computer did. Eventually they let him go. The charges were dropped, and the prosecutor's office later admitted the case should never have been built the way it was. But the question he walked out with is the one that matters. He had never set foot in that store. His picture had never sat in some lineup a witness pointed to. So how did the police get his name, his face, and his front door out of a crime he had no connection to at all? The answer is a quiet machine that most people have never once thought about, and that has almost certainly already looked at you. Go back to where it started. In 2018, someone walked into a downtown watch shop and stole a few $1,000s of merchandise. The only witness was a camera bolted to the ceiling. It caught one grainy, low-light frame of a man in a dark cap. The kind of smeared, pixelated image you could stare at all day and still not recognize your own brother in it. There was no name attached to that face, so the police did what more and more departments now do by reflex. They handed the blur to software, and they asked it to go find a person. So look at what the software actually does. It takes one image and compares it against a vast state database. Millions of driver's license photos and mugshots. Ordinary people who have never been accused of anything in their lives. The software does not know who anyone is. It produces a ranked list of faces that look statistically similar, each one scored by a probability. Feed it a sharp photo, and it does reasonably well. Feed it a blurry one, and it will still hand back somebody. In this case, it reached into old license records and surfaced a photo from years before. A man who had once renewed his license one afternoon. That was the whole link, a guess ranked by a number, pulled out of a database he never knew he was in. And a face on a screen is not supposed to be enough. Everyone in that room knew it. A match is a lead, a name to look into, not a name to arrest. But instead of treating it that way, the detectives took the exact photo the computer had picked and dropped it into a physical lineup. Then they showed that lineup to a store contractor. Not someone who had witnessed the theft, someone who had only ever watched the same blurry video the computer watched. He pointed at the picture. And that small nod, a machine's guess, confirmed by a person staring at the same footage the machine had, was written down as probable cause to arrest a living human being. So that is how they got his door. Not evidence. Not a witness who had seen him do anything. A probability dressed up as an identification, and not one person along the chain stopped to break it, which leaves the harder question. It turns this from a single man's bad luck into everyone's problem. Out of all the millions of faces in that database, why did the machine reach for a face like his? This technology does not miss at random. It misses in a pattern. And that pattern has been measured in a government lab in black and white. In 2019, the federal government's own standards laboratory ran the largest test of its kind on these algorithms. The finding was blunt. A great many of them return false matches far more often on black and Asian faces than on white ones. Not by a hair. In head-to-head tests, 10 to 100 times more often. Consider what a false match actually is. It is the machine looking straight at you and confidently naming a stranger, or looking at a stranger and confidently naming you. And in test after test, if your face was black or Asian, the very tool the police were leaning on was far more likely to write your name onto a crime that was never yours. And the way police use these tools makes it worse, not better. Searching one blurry face against a database of millions is exactly where false matches pile up highest, and the worst error rates of all landed on the faces of black women. An earlier study had looked at a related but different job, software guessing whether a face is a man or a woman, and found the same shape. It misread darker-skinned women up to a third of the time, while almost never erring on a lighter-skinned man. That is not the same task as the matching that sent police to his door, but the gap runs the same way. And this is not a machine holding a grudge. When that same federal lab looked closer, the gap all but vanished on systems built in Asia. Strong evidence the fault lies in the faces a system is trained on, not in the technology itself. These tools learn from what they are shown, and for years, faces like his barely made the set. Now bring it all the way back to you. Your face is almost certainly already sitting in one of these databases. If you hold a driver's license, you are in the lineup, a permanent one you never volunteered for and can never step out of. You do not have to break a law, know a criminal, or go anywhere near a crime scene. To a piece of software, you only have to look a little like somebody else. The man who was marched off his own lawn in handcuffs was not careless, and he was not unlucky in the way we usually mean it. He was simply matched. He did not let it go. In 2021, civil rights lawyers sued the city on his behalf, and 3 years later, the case settled. By news accounts, he was paid somewhere around $300,000. But the money is not what matters here. As part of that deal, the city was forced to rewrite its rules. Police there can no longer arrest anyone on a face match alone. The match is treated as a lead and nothing more. Every earlier case where the software was used to make an arrest has to be pulled and reviewed, going back years. And a court will keep watch over the department to make sure the promise holds. It is, for now, one of the strictest limits any American city has put on this technology. But read that outcome closely. Those rules bind one police department in one city. Everywhere else, this same power still works the way it always has. And his case was only the first of its kind the whole country ever heard about, which is not the same as the first to happen. Before his story ever broke, at least 2 other men, one in the same city, one 2 states away, had already been arrested this exact way, their cases only surfacing later. He was only the first whose story got loud enough to force anyone to change a single rule, and he was not the last. In the years since, more people have been arrested on the say-so of a face match. One of them was 8 months pregnant, held in a cell over a crime a computer had tied to her face. By the count of the group that represented him, there are now more than a dozen known wrongful arrests like his in this country, and nearly every person named in them has been black, each one an ordinary person, each one matched by a machine, and each one believed over their own flat denial. So here is where all of this leaves you. The next time you renew a license or upload a photo, or just walk past a camera you never notice, remember what your face has quietly become? A password you can never change, that software somewhere is already comparing against the worst thing that happened in your city today. One man got his day, his settlement, and his apology. He still does not get back the 30 hours or the look on his daughter's faces on that lawn. And the rules that finally protect him stop dead at one city's edge. Past it, the machine is still watching, still guessing, still reaching for a face in the dark. One day, it may reach for yours. If you would rather understand that before it happens than after, subscribe and stay. Because there is one more way the state can make you a suspect. Not with your face this time, but with the trail you leave without ever knowing it. That is the case we take apart next.